Good afternoon. As you just heard, I'm Dave Towers. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Smart. And it's great to see so many familiar faces and a number of new faces. Feels like we're growing, which is fantastic. As you know, as Julie just talked about, our theme this year for Innovate is Be Moved, right? And it really represents the fact that often, as you've just seen, your companies, your organizations interact with customers at times when they're sort of moments that matter in their lives, right? Could be good, could be bad, could be just impactful, right? But as Lee said this morning, an insurance claim, right? You've been in a car crash. You've had a health diagnosis that you're gonna have to navigate, right? These critical sorts of moments where we have those interactions, and whether you get that moment right, whether it's financial services or insurance or healthcare, where you get that moment right and you deliver for the customer and you create that moment where the reaction from the organization, as Heidi said, is right, feels right, or whether you deliver an experience that has friction in it and creates difficulty for the customer in that moment, really have a lot to do with the relationship that you end up having with your customer, right? So for the next little bit, the panel and I, and particularly these guys, you probably want to hear what they have to say more than me, are going to talk about that. We're going to focus a little bit on the why here as opposed to the how. We'll have a lot of how discussions tomorrow, but we'd like to focus on the how, on the why. So I have Piyush, Adrian, and Max all here, and you heard the announcement. And what I'd like to do is have each of them introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their organizations and the roles that they play in them. So Piyush, I'll start with you.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. As Dave said, I am the VP of Health Services at CareFirst. CareFirst, Blue Cross Blue Shield, is an 88-year-old organization serving the communities in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. And my team is focused on supporting the provider network operations, risk adjustment, quality, medical management functions. What that means basically in practice is that think of a member gets a diagnosis and they have a simple question: can I go find a provider that is within 10 miles of me where they are accepting new patients and I can set up an online appointment? That's the questions, that kind of questions that we answer for our members. That's what my team does. My focus primarily is really looking at transforming the clinical, the operations, and the technology aspects, bringing them together to provide a seamless experience for our stakeholders. We support the member and the provider community.
Very good. Thank you. Adrian?
Thanks, Dave, and thanks, Lee, for having me here. Great to be here to talk to you all today. Adrian Thompson, I'm Chief Customer Officer at Motor Insurance Services and also Motor Technologies in Los Angeles. We do a number of different things at Motor. We first are an R&D shop, so we develop software products to improve telematics-based insurance experiences. I'll talk to some insurance people about that whenever you want outside for hours. We can catch up over a beer. We also provide OEM insurance services. So if you go to Lucid, for example, for an insurance product, we're providing that as the white label product to them, and we do that for a number of OEMs here and globally. And my role there is to look after any of the customer interactions, so the claims organization, the customer service organization, and luckily for me, the InsurTech practice, I call it, or digital transformation. So I get to work with the technology quickly to deliver really fantastic, what we think, customer experiences.
Really good. Thank you. And Max?
Max Gelfer, CTO for Bessemer. I have to say, I envy you a bit, being able to experiment in a green field, in a green zone.
It's great.
Changing the insurance industry, one of the oldest ones, probably older than financial.
Yeah.
Nothing's older than financial market, I guess. So Bessemer is more than 120 years old, essentially multifamily office. We cater to ultra high net worth individuals. We manage assets ourselves. But one of the things in Bessemer, the kind of quintessential pride within Bessemer is client service. And whether we're talking about the example of people losing houses, whether we're talking about ultra high net worths, at the end of the day, problems are the same. Bessemer probably says Bessemer Trust, Bessemer Trust. So big part of our identity is creating trust for people, which means transfer of money, which also means dealing with losing the loved ones, dealing with consequences, dealing with who got the inheritance, settling the feuds within the companies. You've seen Succession. But it's a very personal business at the end of the day. And on a broad picture, we bring in technology into the business, but at the same time, it's still people's business. It's still, at the end of the day, you will be talking to real people with real emotions, with real views, with real opinions. So how do you build it, how do you bring it all together is a quintessential challenge.
Very good. So Max, I want to stay with you for now. So customers, as we know, they don't, and we've all been on the customer side of this, so it's interesting to think about it. But customers, you don't. I've been, I fly a lot, and right, so I call to change a ticket, and they say, oh, we have to do a manual reissue, right? As a flyer, you probably have all heard that. They have to do a manual reissue. I don't know what that is. I really don't care what that is. But there's some system problem that means I have to talk to somebody else, right? So customers, don't care about departments and systems, and that's kind of your problem. So I guess, what they care about, or what I would care about, is whether your problem gets solved with the right answer and quickly, right? So maybe you can talk about how your organization is approaching this challenge of sort of creating these end-to-end experiences.
Sure. No, I'm happy to start. It's a lot about, and Dave, you ultimately, you run a sales organization. So it's a lot about how you think about external. Each person is an ambassador, right? If you're talking to a client, you expect that you will answer the questions from client or find somebody else who will answer, but you're not gonna, you will try not to send client around to 25 different locations. And that is very important to see both internally and externally, right? Again, when I look at Bessemer, for example, again, Bessemer thinks of itself as providing this very high-touch, white-glove service. So when we work with clients, advisors pride themselves on the ability to take the questions from clients, whatever the questions might be, and be able to address it using the full resources of the firm. It does not always translate in the same internally. And that is the challenge, and that is exactly the challenge which you're describing. So the same thing which I'm asking people in my organization, right, and I'm CTO, I'm working in technology, is think of yourself as ambassador. Think of yourself, when you get a question, find somebody, instead of asking a client, quote unquote, ask an internal person to walk around or find the answer by themselves. If the question obviously related to technology, find the answer yourself and try to self-deliver it to the person. For example, like when I hear a question from executives or anybody on the floor about technology, I will take it as my role to go and find the answer. I don't care what the question is. Your phone is not working, your Windows is not working, whatever the question is, it is my job. If you ask me the question, it is my job to find it. It's not easy. It's not easy to propagate within the organization, and Bessemer, like others, do have some boundaries and some silos. So part of this is, how do you break the silos within? How do you ultimately empower people to think of themselves, to think of themselves as the ambassador, in that case, for their own department, right? I think it empowers people. Two, and that's probably the most important, is when you start delivering these questions, when you become a person who other people want to ask questions, all of a sudden you actually get elevated. Elevated both just in your day-to-day job, and maybe elevated through the promotion, because all of a sudden you are the person who answers the question from people. They know that if they, whoever it is they are, they know that if they come to you, you will help them, right? And that's a fantastic role within an organization. I do need to thank SmartCom, because when we started working with them 2 years ago, that's how they operated. I love to pick on pagination of the reports. Pat and Subu know it very well. But they didn't pass us around through multiple hands. When we asked the question from Smart Communication, they found the way to answer the question. That was one of the immediate attractiveness for us to work with the company, right? But that's kind of, think in your organization both externally, that's how you want to treat clients, because if you don't, they're probably gonna leave. But then invert it and look internally into the same exact problem. I am the ambassador, I represent my organization. It is my pride to figure out how to help you instead of redirecting you through 25 different areas.
Yeah, that's a good message to hear. It feels like it's almost like the customer doesn't care what departments you have or what's as on the inside, you also can't care so much about what departments, right? Anyone want to add to that before I move on? Okay. So Adrian, maybe I'll jump over to you next, just to see if I can stump you, right? So we've all been, or we've all experienced situations or been on the other side of experiences where systems made things harder than they needed to be, right? What are some of the common friction points that you've seen in your organization? And Adrian, as he said, is in a different situation. He's setting up a greenfield here, so you can set your organization up to avoid those. But what are some of those friction points that you can talk about that you've seen?
It's a really great question. Let me just think about that for a minute. No, kidding. No, so I think there's a few things here. I think one thing that I've seen a lot in previous roles and something I'm seeking to mitigate or stop here at Motor is people build systems or processes or whatever it is they're doing for the 1%. They build it for the outlier or the edge case to solve that, and they don't build it for the 99% or the 99.9% in a lot of cases. So a great example for that would be for the insurers in the room. You might have a particular risk which the underwriter didn't ask for a piece of information or didn't think they needed to at the underwriting part of the journey. So that risk then got put into the system. We got the premium. Later on, we got a claim for it that was larger than we thought or shouldn't have happened. And then all of a sudden, now that piece of information that you didn't get up front, everyone's got to give it, right? But it doesn't apply to everyone coming through into the sales funnel. So I'd advocate just for people not to do that. Just don't ever create it for the 1% or the edge cases. Kick those out of your automated loop if you can. Let a human deal with that or someone who's technically qualified and build for the 99%. That's what we're trying to do. Yeah. Secondly, I would say that I think it's not just insurance. I think it's most organizations here. We're quite reactive, right? And legacy systems and processes, I think, are reactive to the customer always providing us information. So they've got to contact us, call us, email us, provide us things, go through a checklist and do stuff, where we're trying to move it to be proactive. So we're using some of our telematics-based technology, Dave, for example, to notify us when a customer, if they've given us consent, has a claim or an accident. We get the information. We can use that telematics data to whip up visualization, see what it was, and then we can proactively call the customer and say, hey, Dave, are you all right? What can we do for you? We see you've had a claim. Don't worry about it. We've got your back. We're going to take care of you. You go and be you and go and get a beer and relax. Call us in 24 hours. We'll get a rental car to your house, and then we can proceed with everything. So I think that's something we're striving for, and I think that's what all organizations should strive for, and I think that proactivity is important. The third thing is the clarity that I've found. I've got a colleague here, Jitin, with me as well, who can answer questions on this if we need to. We've seen it a lot in claims. Quite often, the first call that you get, it might give you resolution to that thing that you needed to do, right? You might get that in the best experiences in the world. The second follow-up or the communication is the one that's poor. It doesn't tell you what the next step is. Okay, what's next? What am I waiting for next? What's my timeline? So particularly in my last role, we tried to just improve that clarity and make sure that even if it was a long timeline or not the answer the customer wanted, for example, that we tell them exactly what's happening next. So we have a lengthy police report we need to get for your particular claim. That's going to take 42 days. So in 42 days, when we know got it, we're going to contact you. You don't need to do anything up until that point. Right. Make that clear on the phone, make it clear on the email comms, and just make sure people are aware of that. So I think it's provide clarity, Dave, yeah.
So Chris, when he was up, talked about about providing somebody a notification that there's a new communication,
Yeah.
right? Something new for you to go. Even just that sort of level of it's clarity, but it's also just what's happening, right? It's
right.
just just information, even if it's not a lot, that can make a big difference there.
Well, Dave, we found it. I'll just say one more thing on this. So in New Zealand last role, we found that a document we created with SmartCom, so it's obviously your fault, right? Not ours. The document gave a piece of information in the middle which we hadn't really looked at properly, but it was ambiguous, right? It didn't tell the customer exactly what they needed to do. So what it did, it generated a load of calls into our contact center straight away. What do I do here? What does this mean? So we just whipped in there, changed that text around, and it gave the clarity to people they needed, and then those calls dropped down. Yeah.
I'm actually, I like this idea of proactivity, right, that you just brought up. And if I got your description correct, which I probably fabricated some of it in my mind.
Please.
You said you're going to use telematics so you know that I was in an accident, and you're going to call me up and say, relax and have a beer. That's pretty good customer service, right? I mean,
Well, I think especially in the insurance world, right? That's not the
my
experience
wife's
I'm
like,
sure
what are you
most of us
doing?
have.
Well, insurance company called, so, right, that's what I have to do. Piyush, we'll move to you. Maybe you can give us, in the health world, I think there are lots of stories like this, right? But maybe you can give some examples of moments where, getting the experience right really matters.
I think in healthcare, we are all consumers of healthcare, everybody here. And there are opportunities, the consumer, the member looks at us as a single entity. But we have created so many touch points and friction points and opportunities, especially when they are most vulnerable in the most stressful environment. And I can give a personal example. My mother-in-law had an episode about 10 years ago, and even though I've spent 30 years in healthcare, navigating, trying to figure out, taking care of her when you are at your weakest, and you're trying to figure out what do you need, what are the benefits coverage look like, should I put a home-based palliative care, do I put her in hospice? These are difficult times, difficult decisions, and if there is not clarity, it adds to the stress and the confusion. I give my team, and this has been sort of, that experience really shaped my way of looking at things, where the customer, the member has to be the center of everything that we do. And we say this, that when you look at a decision, you got to think about if your mother was on the other end and you are trying to make a decision on her behalf, whether it's access to care, whether it is provider access, we need to make sure we are thinking around those lines. Also we are working hard on making sure from an experience perspective, we have lots of information, but the fabric of that information is not connected. The connective tissue is missing. When I say the member is saying, I have to walk through different endpoints, Adrian's example as well, if I go through a hip replacement, we know that this member lives alone. When I get home, should I have clinical and non-clinical services available for them? Why do they have to pick up the phone and ask for what benefit coverage do I have? Why do they need to find out if they have a benefit coverage? If I live alone after a hip replacement, I should not be going and cooking or taking shower because I have a high risk of readmission. If I have benefit coverage to get food, should I be able to get food delivered? By the way, I know that Piyush is type 2 diabetic, so don't send cookies in that food that you're going to send across to them. This kind of time of an experience where there is stress. Like Adrian talked about the example of an accident. Similarly, you're going through stress in a healthcare episode, a diagnosis, a prognosis that comes back. That I think that trust that you have to earn, having consistent information back. We have multiple outreaches. They can go onto the web, they have a mobile app, and they're getting letters. Well, that communication has to be consistent. It has to be reliable. There is very little transparency in healthcare, right? It's one of the most opaque industries we have, where I don't know when I walk out. Think about any experience you have had. I go get a plumber. I ask 5 people. I try to figure out, is that the right price point? But we don't know in healthcare. When you walk out the door, you're not sure what the copay is going to be. So those kind of, the reliability and the transparency and the consistency is a focus for us from an experience perspective as well, so that the member during their stressful time is getting the right clarity and support from us in their difficult times.
Yeah. And also, there's an element here of complexity, right? Some of the things you described, knowing if you're going to deliver them food, you can't deliver them cookies if they're diabetic. Like, there's complexity there that really matters, right? And so simplifying complexity is hugely valuable. I can see that across your businesses as well.
But you're the expert as well, right? You're meant to tell the customer what to do because they don't know. Otherwise, they'd be working in healthcare and getting paid the premium, right?
Yeah, and that's, you're absolutely right, because they do not know. And again, I'll give another example. I've been in healthcare 30 years. I had to go through a procedure in my eye, and they put a dye in before I went in through a laser. I never knew to ask that if there's an allergic reaction to that dye. I didn't know to ask. And I was in the hospital for 2 weeks after the dye because I had a severe allergic reaction. So there are instances where you don't know to even ask the question, how can we, with the information we have, the clinical and the operational and the technology, bringing those pieces together to give that insight, to give that experience back, because the member is looking at us as CareFirst, is looking at us as a health insurance payer. How can we make that experience?
Right, yeah.
Can I do a quick straw poll, do you mind, of the audience? Can I ask anyone here who is not from the USA to raise their hand? Or migrants to the USA? So when you moved here and you had to navigate the USA healthcare system from, for example, the UK where it's universal, did you have any idea what you were doing? Because I really didn't. Copay, RX, I had no idea what this stuff was.
We don't know what we're
You don't
doing.
know either?
We don't,
great.
don't worry about that.
So you need someone who's going to tell you these things.
I got news for you. I've lived here a long time, and I don't know how to navigate.
No one knows. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, quick story. My wife has rheumatoid arthritis, right? So she takes something to keep that from sort of flaming up, right? And it's very simple. As long as she takes her shot every few weeks, she's all good. Any news from the insurance company that potentially says it's going to be discontinued or she has to requalify or whatever, emotions go through the roof. And probably because she's having to deal with me, emotions are already through the roof anyway, right? So it's just a simple example of how a seemingly innocuous communication can really flare emotions and affect relationships.
It's the way you frame it, right? The framing. So you don't have to say these horrible words like termination of coverage and things, because that's the sort of thing they might put on there, right?
Yeah.
We had an example of that before. We had a cancellation notice that was quite strongly worded because it was people who didn't pay their direct debit on time, and we wanted them to know that and say, hey, you need to pay to keep your coverage. But our partner didn't particularly like it, which was Toyota at the time, and their branding didn't like it. So we changed it to, oops, looks like you missed something, like quite nice at the top of the page. And then it had some detail. And we didn't get more payments, Dave. It didn't solve the problem. But the partner was happy and the customer
partner was happy, yeah. Well, that's important, I'll tell you that, Chris. Yeah. So, okay, Max, I'm going to come back to you. Heidi talked and Lee talked this morning a little bit about sort of the future and the pace of change, right? And so when you look forward, as things continue to evolve, what do you think organizations will need to do differently to sort of continue to earn trust in these matters?
Yeah, no, and I think you started this conversation that actually very well fits into the question you're asking. The way how I think of this, and I'm sure there are other opinions as well, is on demand and on my terms. So as a client, I want to get my answer, I want to get my service, I want to get what I want when I want. Yeah. Not when you think you want to give it to me, when I think I want to get it. And the second thing is on my terms. I want to see what I want to see. Not what you're trying to show me, but I want to see what I want to see, right? And that's we're all conditioned to operate this way in today's world, right? You get to see what you want to see when you go on social, when you go on Facebook, when you go on YouTube. You choose what you want to see when you want to see it, right? You go to your bank, you can operate 24/7, you know how much money you have in the bank. So why would you not operate in the same exact way with us?
Yeah.
Right? Oh, our batch runs in the night, so you cannot see your balances until the morning. Or we calculate performance only at the end of the month's end, at the end of the month, so you need to wait. Like, there are so many barriers, and people choose to understand, oh yeah, it's month's end performance, I'm gonna wait. But they're not gonna tolerate it for long. And especially with companies like Adrian's, Greenfield, which are moving forward, the company which has been in existence for 120 years like us needs to think about how to operate in this environment, okay? I'll give you a real-time example from this morning. I got an email which I've never seen in my life from my insurance company, which said, your premium has decreased. Never seen in my life. I got so excited. I'm like, how much did it decrease? Is it like 50 cents? Is it
Which
something
company? Which company was it? Tell everyone.
State Farm. The cheapest in New York to get car insurance. So I'm like, I never do it. I followed the link to see how much my premium decreased. And it shows me the same amount, which I always pay. So I'm like, what is going on? So I actually sent an email back. To their credit, they replied, they said, no, it decreased as of your renewal rate sometime in June, and that's when you get to see how much it decreased. And I'm like, you lost all of this. Like, by June, I forget about it. It's probably not a material decrease. Like, as of this moment right now, I felt very good about you, and I'll forget about it. And like, instead of good experience, I'm telling you about the bad experience of them not being able to tell me, like, don't send an email to get me excited if you cannot answer my question, right? Like, so it's kind of like, it's you losing the great opportunity in case like this, okay? So being on demand is a challenge for all of the financials, insurance, all of the, like, we don't operate on demand. We operate on our own terms. The important thing for us, and again, Adrian, you get to do it in your business, you need to flip it. You need to think about your business from the perspective of the client. What does client want to see? Not what I want to show the client, what does client want to see? And I need to figure out how to get it to the client when the client wants it, not when I want it, okay? On my terms as a client means that you overloaded me, insurance companies to start with, and the financial companies. Like, part of it is regulatory, but like every time when I get the mail from my bank or from my investment companies, I think of this as a door stoppers, right? That's the only thing which it's good for. It's quite thick, so if you put it under the door, you can fix the door in the right place. But none of the information is interesting for me. What's interesting for me is a follow-up. I got the performance, I know my positions, but what will happen because of the events in the market today? What part of my portfolio is vulnerable? What is going on? That's the ability, that's the ability to answer these questions real time is important. And again, for somebody like us, when we meet with clients, and that's a discussion which we're having, and that's something again which SmartCom will help us, is do not just show static reports, allow us to drill down, allow us to be dynamic in our answers. When the client says, I got what you're showing me, I saw it, I don't need to know it 10 times. What I'm interested in is this. That's the ability of companies to deliver it. In my view, I mean, it will differentiate companies in the next, whatever the periods we're talking about, you know, the next 2 years, 3 years, but it will become a mandatory feature within a short number of years because the newcomers will operate from this perspective, okay? So my advice to myself, my advice to my team, my advice to people in our industry, by the way, if they don't follow, it's okay. If everybody come back to Bessemer, I'm happy with this. But my advice to people is operate on clients' terms and start from the questions. Are you providing client information, client data, whatever client asking for, on the demand time which client is asking for? And are you providing information which client is looking for? Or are you just following your own terms of we're given whatever we have?
Yeah. Very helpful. Adrian, I'm going to ask you the same question on the look down the road. You know, when you and I realize to some extent for you, this is you're doing that every day because you're creating something new. But when you see the pace of change, right, and AI and the things that are coming in, like, how do you, what strategies do you have to use to keep up with that?
Thanks, Dave. Look, I think I'm a big fan of AI. I think it's great. I think it's great to automate processes, microprocesses, solve those manual transactional things that people detest doing. So I think there's a quality of life at work improvement there from AI. I do think that you need to have well-paid, well-qualified, technical expert, human in the loops there. So I think we're looking to use AI to do that, automate, take the manual processing out of it, but have people where you really need them to do those checks, where I don't quite trust AI to do it, right? Particularly in insurance, you need a underwriting experience or licensed people in a lot of states and countries. So AI is never going to fill that gap. So I think you can take out probably 60-70% of someone's workload, make that a lot easier. Have less FTE, pay them more. Pay them, get great output out of them, and that's what we're looking to do now.
Yeah.
So I think that's our kind of path forward. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, if I can add, because it kind of feeds in the same, like, we're starting to use one of the areas where we're using AI is, like, think about all of the questions which you get externally and internally. Think about all the conversations your employees having with external clients. It's probably recorded somewhere. And that's why AI is actually fantastic to analyze it. Well, what type of questions what is the most common question your client's asking? Are clients satisfied with the answer? Not because they put a smiley face or something, but because how long the communication go, right? It's actually where the textual information is where AI is doing a fantastic job. And it's also not the most important. If it doesn't get 100% right, so be it. Like, it got you 9 out of 10 most important questions. It's fine. So pointing it into the sales and client-facing information is such a no-brainer.
So I think I'm going to try, and I know you guys have done a great job of putting themes out there, and some of them are relative to your specific industries, but a couple things recurred that I want to just point out before we wrap up. So Max, I think ownership was a big one that I didn't necessarily predict, so we didn't have that in the practice rounds. Appreciate that was really good. And I think there's something for us all to take away from that. The notion of being proactive in many cases, right, maybe in the case of State Farm, being proactive about your rate change, they were a little too early being proactive, but then the notion of being proactive about communications certainly is one that I think benefits everybody. And then definitely clarity, right? Just giving people an idea of where they stand in the process, whatever that process is certainly helpful and probably applies to things outside of these, right? So with that, I'm really, really grateful for all of you and the time you took to prepare for the panel, and thanks very much. With that, we'd like to bring Brian Wardis back up on the stage. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.